The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
Valley, hooey Hollywood, where any office boy or young mechanic can be a panic with just a good-looking fan. And any barmaid can be a star maid if she dances with or without a plan. Hooray for Hollywood, where you're terrific if you're even good, where anyone at all from Shirley Temple to Amy Semple is equally understood. Go out and try your luck.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to a Radulich Broadcasting premiere podcast, Damn You Hollywood. And here's your host, Robert Winfree. Yay!
There will be no yay today, Mark. There will be no yays.
What is the line from the movie? If you start to fall out of love with me, love me harder. Was that what she said?
Please,
to him?
I will get to that in a minute or two.
I meant to introduce you as if you fall out of love with Robert Winfree, love him harder, Robert Winfree. And I am here to love you harder, as hard as I need to.
Mark,
and I think the line there is, when I become hard to love, love me harder.
Thank you, Shay.
Okay, if you find me harder to love, then please try harder to love me.
I have been trying harder to love you for over 10 years now, my friend.
And now that we have that bit of Tumblr wisdom out of our system.
I was going to say, you guys want to be alone?
Yes, but I can't fucking get away from any of you people, so here we go!
Here we go. Oh, man, I'm fractal again.
Save the production stuff for the production meeting. We're on air. All right, tonight, everybody, I'm sorry. We're talking about The Crow. There's no getting around it. That's where we are.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here to bury yet another IP.
I've got my pitchfork and my shovel, and we're going to burying.
All right, well, speaking of pitchforks and shovels, why don't you introduce the rest of the panel there, Shecky?
Yeah, joining us in this wake, we have, first of all, he was on last week. If you enjoyed him, he's back again. Mac is with us. Mac, how you doing?
Hey, guys. Sorry I'm all fractal again. I bought a green screen so that wouldn't happen, but I'm back.
No, I like you better this way. I like you all Robloxy.
Appreciate that.
We have different textures going on for all of us. It's great. We're like across the Spider-Verse over here.
How do you like your podcast in many different shades?
There you go. See, we entertain here.
Also, we were originally going to have Dorian. Dorian couldn't make it. Instead, we now have Shay Tate, who is a big fan of this entire franchise. So we're very glad to have her. Shay, how you doing?
Hi there.
All right, Robert. As you said, we are talking The Crow 2024, and The Crow is a 2024 American Gothic superhero film in theory.
It's neither of those things.
Directed by Rupert Sanders from a screenplay by Zach Baylin and William Schneider. It is a reboot of the Crow film series. It is the fifth in the franchise and the second film after the 1994 film to adapt the 1989 comic book series by James O'Barr. It stars Bill Skarsgård as Eric / the Crow, a man who is resurrected to avenge the deaths of himself and his girlfriend, played by FKA Twigs. I assume the kids know who that is. I couldn't pick her out of a fucking lineup if my kids.
I think that's formerly known as.
Yeah.
Okay,
she's new to me too.
Okay.
She's apparently she's some kind of an R&B singer, and then they never have her sing in the movie.
Yeah, that's what I've been told. Well, they didn't have What's Her Nut sing in the Battleship movie either, but there she was. The Crow had its world premiere in New York City on August 20th, 2024, and was released in France, where they get it all. France gets it all. On August 21st, 2024, in the U.S. by Lionsgate, formerly a studio. On
Lionsgate releasing Borderlands and then this back-to-back is going to cause people to jump out of windows.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we're on the level of Moonfall at this point.
We've got to be between the two of them.
Yeah. The film received negative reviews from critics, no shit, and has grossed a paltry $4.6 million worldwide. More on that in about an hour.
Give or take.
Okay. So a couple of housekeeping items before I go to the panel for their relationship to the franchise. One, scratch this off your bingo card. Take a drink. We did this film series on Long Road to Ruin many, many years ago. Many. I've talked about it at length with Sean Comer and Benjamin J. Colon. I've talked at length about the soundtrack and how awesome I thought it was. That and the Judgment Night soundtrack, like, defined music for me in the late 90s, early 2000s. I showed The Crow with Brandon Lee to my kids. My daughter, who is all althy and gothy, loved it, as you would imagine. My son, who doesn't like the goth aesthetic at all, thought it was gay with an E. And you should have heard his comments. You should have heard the comments that he gave me. I have instructed the boy to not to leave his sister alone and not tell her that he hates things, so that, you know, we can have a nice time at the theater, the three of us. So we both so when the movie ended, he just sort of looks at me. I looked at him and I'm like, when she goes to the bathroom, we'll talk, Jonas. And I will share with you what he said when we get to the to the film review. But I've never seen him angrier at a movie.
Oh, we're gonna have a good time tonight.
Oh yeah, but I love the original. The original. I mean, I grew up in the goth industrial scene in the '90s and early 2000s as well. I love the music. I went to see a bunch of bands back then, like Ministry and KMFDM. Loved this soundtrack. Thought the movie was great, and it was, you know, and it should not be touched. It was one of those where I'm like, we did this great the first time. Leave the memories alone, as the late Larry Zonka would say. So with that out of the way, Shay Tate, what is your relationship to this? And I never read the comic book. I know about it now because I've done the podcast on it, but I have never actually read it. Okay.
Well, now you need to do another. Now you need to read it so you can do another podcast on it.
There you go. What is your relationship to the IP, my love?
So I actually grew up with this movie. It is, and this is a theme for me, it is one of those weird ones that I found in the Walmart $5 bin when I was like 10 or 12. And I absolutely fell in love with it. It had a killer soundtrack. This is actually one of the movies that got me into industrial, harder rock, a little more goth music. And it also influenced a lot of my style, especially my earlier teenage style. When I was first starting to learn how to sew, I would tear up t-shirts and take random scraps of leather and put them all together to try and look like this movie. And it's an absolutely beloved movie for me. And it's had a huge influence on who I am and what I listen to and how I look. Even in my day-to-day life, it's been a massive influence on me just in general.
Do we have time for a quick game? We do. It's my podcast. I'm going to give you 5 bands. Just tell me yes or no if you've seen them live, okay? Ready?
The answer is probably no. I've seen about 3 bands live.
Awesome. Here we go. KMFDM?
No.
Ministry?
Nope.
9 Inch Nails?
Nope.
Susie and the Banshees?
No.
Sisters of Mercy?
Nope.
All right. 0 for 5.
Right up the middle. You're out.
Yeah, I have not had the opportunity to go to a lot of live shows.
Gotcha. I've seen Ministry and KMFDM and 9 Inch Nails a whole bunch. I unfortunately have never been able to see Sisters of Mercy, so typo negative a bunch. And like on the way home from The Crow, I played a whole bunch of the stuff for my daughter. I was like, here's The Cult, and here's The Cure, and here's Susie and the Banshees, and here's Bauhaus. All 9 minutes of Bela Lugosi's Dead. God, that's a long song.
It's up there with Cold November Rain. It just never ends.
Oh, someone left my cake out in the rain. All right, Mac, tell us about your love and appreciation for all things Crow.
Well, let me back up just a little bit. I have a deep love and appreciation for a lot of the themes and stories told in comic books, and I'm old school. After a certain while, I kind of left that alone. So in the year that the original Crow was released, all I knew about it was that it had been patterned after a comic book, which at the time, '94, was kind of, they've never really done that very well. And so I went in blind. I had no idea what it was about. I didn't know it was special at all. And of course, we all knew about Brandon Lee at the time. So I had to see it. I'm a big Bruce Lee fan. I had to see that. And I saw it and I was kind of floored. I'm not at all goth, but I understood the aesthetic. It worked really well. Brandon blew me away. I think there was more room for his improvement, and it's our great loss that he didn't get a chance to do that for us. But I was kind of limping when I left. It's like, okay, I have to know more about this. And then I promptly got busy with my life and didn't read the comic book. So that was it.
The comic book shares something in common with the other book, American Splendor, which was made into a movie starring Paul Giamatti, in that it was an instrument for the author to work through his trauma. Specifically, in the case of The Crow, it was to work through the death of, I believe it was a girlfriend who had died in a car accident. American Splendor, just to get that piece of business out of the way, it's his working through his dying of cancer. Something I know him very well. Robert, did you ever read the book? I know you've seen the movie. You definitely listened to The Long Road to Ruin back in the day. What's your thoughts on the IP?
This is one that I appreciate more intellectually than feel viscerally. This did not a movie that really spoke to me a whole lot, but it's incredibly stylish, the movie.
Hey, real quick, did you see the movie before Sting started showing up as the Crow or after?
When was the first time I watched this? I was a latecomer to actually watching the movie. So technically Sting would have been... I would have seen Sting before I saw the movie, at a bare minimum. It was a movie I was aware of more than I actually had watched, because I saw trailers, heard people talking about it, and just kind of went, I don't think that's for me. I don't think I'll be interested. And, years later, I finally got around to actually sitting down and watching it, and I was...
Yet another thing you and my son have in common, no appreciation for the goth aesthetic.
Well, no, I appreciate it. It's not mine. Like,
Sure.
I appreciate it, but it's not something I.
It's not your thing.
Yeah, not really. But it's a thing that I appreciate that's out there, and I think if it went away, we'd be a little bit worse off for it, but...
Yeah, I agree.
So, the way it plays with architecture, the way it plays with... I mean, there's a few bonker CGI effects that haven't held up all that well from the original, but it takes the right approach to maximizing the feel of the movie, the feel of the story. That is a oppressive location. Everything feels grimy.
Yeah, it feels like one of Dante's levels of hell.
Yeah, it feels the way it should. And maybe the biggest thing that movie has going for it, there's two. One is a willingness to... This is kind of a 90s thing, but a willingness to appreciate... It's not full-on fatalism, but avoiding revisionism. And I'll get to that when I talk about our new incarnation of this particular story.
Mm-hmm.
The other is Brandon Lee, who... It is so difficult to nail the right energy for that kind of character. And it's something Bill Skarsgård, bless him, he's not a bad actor. He was woefully unprepared for this.
Yeah,
this was not him.
I'm going to get after the director for that.
I don't want to get into the craft review, but I'm going to put a lot of this on the direction, because a director will make a good actor bad.
True.
And I think this was sorely lacking in a director who had a handle on the material. But keep going.
But with Brandon Lee, what we get is... It's kind of 90s manic, which is not the same as 2020's manic, where everything is like super overblown. But this is a character that goes from depressed and mopey at times to gleefully violent at targets that he deems appropriate. And then with little bits of the humanity that still remains within this character when he interacts with a few of the other characters in particular. That keeps him human in the eyes of the audience, and walking that line between... So your character can be believably violent, appropriately processing some of the bad things that have happened to him, and still feel human on occasion. That's very difficult to pull off. And the fact that that movie does it so adroitly, it's just... it's the kind of thing that you can't recreate, and heaven knows they've been trying for the last 30 years to sort of recreate that feeling. That movie had 3 sequels.
Oh God, did it ever? Woo-wee!
And
you
look,
can call them that.
the good thing about I'll give one good thing to the attempts at the sequels. Okay, 1, maybe 2, because I'll kind of stick up for City of Angels. It's not great, but I think that's a movie that time has been a bit kinder to than the others, because Salvation and Wicked Prayer are
Sean and I had a good laugh at those.
They deserve to be laughed at, but
they were exactly what they needed to be, like trashy B movies. So there was a lot to make fun of, but they had that kind of nude nuns with big guns trashy charm to them.
Well said.
you assume charm there that I don't believe exists, but
go on.
But yeah, there's sometimes things are just products of their time in ways that you can't necessarily replicate.
Right.
And if you do try, you need a really deep understanding of what worked, what didn't, why it worked, and how to potentially bring that forward. If you don't have any of that, you should really leave some of this stuff alone. See Ghostbusters, see this, see any number of other things.
I want to jump in real quick, and I want to get Shay and Mac to weigh in on this. So listen up, children. I think one of the things that makes The Crow a standout in cinema history is, depending on where you are in the timeline, I think it was aesthetically a enormous influence on the style of especially comic book movies of the late 90s, early 2000s, but a lot of movies in the moody action genre as well. Everything is dark and slimy in a kind of wet city way. It's always raining. I was thinking about like the Ben Affleck Daredevil. Takes a lot of cues from The Crow. So a lot of movies coming out at that time kind of looked at The Crow and went, let's keep doing this. This works. And it took a long time for Hollywood to finally be done with that aesthetic for a while and kind of try some other things. But I think the Crow is sort of an underappreciated influence on cinema style for that era. What do you think, Shay?
Oh yeah, I think it was hugely influential. I think it was honestly influential for a good long while, at least with the kinds of movies that I tend to gravitate towards. Because even past like the mainstream superheroes like Daredevil and those kinds of movies, there was an entire set of comic book styled.
By the way, you were thinking of Spawn.
Yeah, Spawn. Sorry. But there were also a whole bunch of comic book styled movies that weren't necessarily comic book movies. Things like The Spirit and Sin City and a few others there that really tried to capture that aesthetic. And some of them worked really well and some of them didn't work so well. Right.
Mac, you want to weigh in here? Any thoughts?
I saw it. It's like anything else Hollywood does. If big boob blondes works, then let's do that. If moody, rainy shows works, then let's do that. And they'll squeeze it until it doesn't work anymore. That's really what they're doing, is they explore every facet of something that accidentally worked, or something that worked out of a clear blue sky and no one saw that coming. They'll either try to recreate it point to point in their production, or they're stealing facets from it to hang in their production. And like Shay said, sometimes that works depending on the quality of the writing and production and acting. Those would sail on their own, but they're trying to include these aesthetics. So yeah, it colored a lot of things. And honestly, in the broader sense, I don't think it mattered, except that it made it more popular to write darker themes.
Last thing I want to talk about before we get into the sweet plot synopsis, the 50-word or less plot synopsis, is
Mark, if I ever actually did that, you would not know what to do with yourself.
I was going to say, one day we need to all do it. Exactly 50 words just to throw him off.
This we don't talk about it a lot on this show. It's kind of we will acknowledge it if it's a big part of the thing that we're reviewing, but it cannot be understated how important that soundtrack was. One, it was a window into music of that time. It was the most like contemporary of contemporary pieces. You had Pantera, who, just as an aside, because I like to tell fun anecdotes from my personal life, at the end of Pantera's The Badge, at Pantera at the height of its power, by the way, the last line of the song is "What's behind the badge?" or I think it's "Look behind the badge." And my friend Curly blurted out one day, "What big eyes you have!" And forever after that, that's all we would say at the end of that song. But you had that, you had Machines of Love and Grace, you had Helmet, you had Stone Temple Pilots. You just had this really great soundtrack, this window into contemporary music of that time, to the point where it's associated with the movie as one and the same. So if you're going to go and redo The Crow, I think one of the things that has to be captured is modern music of the time that gives you that kind of feel, which we will talk about with this movie in a moment. But just one last round of the horn here, and then Robert can go into the plot synopsis. I think you started to touch on it before, Shay, just how important music was. That specific, some kids call it alternative. That was the modern rebirth of heavy metal with Pantera, the Seattle sound, the modern college radio sound. I'm trying to find anything but to say the word alternative, because I hate that phrase, that word. But what was a snapshot of modern music in the 90s was on that soundtrack, and it set a tone that I don't think anything else would for that movie.
Oh yeah, it would have been a completely different movie if they hadn't used the soundtrack that they had. And it is very much a soundtrack rather than a score. And it honestly, I absolutely love it, because it sounds like the shit that would have been playing ambiently.
Yeah.
Throughout the entire city.
Yeah.
Well, now it's the stuff that you hear ambiently in Walmart, because it's been that long.
That is the fate of all music at some point.
Is that Pantera I hear? What a weird thing.
When did they start putting great stuff on it while I'm in the elevator?
Mac, any thought about the music? If not, we can go to Robert and move on.
I'm not the right guy to talk about music, but I did notice that it made darker themes more prominent, more accessible to just wherever you were. If you were at the bar, if you were at not Walmart necessarily, but places you were at, if there were any music, it followed that track much more often.
A lot of the bands on that were buzz clips at the time. For those of you who may remember what buzz clips were, MTV used to assign that label to.
Well, hang on, Mark. We need to back up one step. There used to be music on MTV.
Back in my day, 100 years ago, when men and the sheep were frightened, there used to be music on MTV. Music videos is what they called them. And some of those music videos, they would assign the label buzz clips, because they were really pushing them hard. Like, there was a period there was like Rage Against the Machine, Danzig's Mother Live from Thrall, Demon Sweat Live, a couple of other ones. And there was a lot of stuff. Like I said, Helmet was on there, Rollins Band. Dude, Liar, huge buzz clip. I played that for my son recently. I'm like, you should do that at karaoke. He was like, I don't know if at 10 years old I should be doing Liar. That seems cringe, Dad. I'm like, oh. Disposable. Detachable penis wasn't cringe, but Liar was cringe. All right, what do I know?
Right,
An old
right.
man.
Yeah.
All right, when old man doesn't know music or cringe, that's when Robert has to take over the plot synopsis, unless you've got
That's
something
very
to add to the
true.
music part.
That is when I should cut in here. All right. So you'd think that the story of Eric Draven would open with us following Eric Draven in some capacity, but no.
That's nonsense.
We open following Shelley, who is played by an R&B singer. No, Mark mentioned it, FKA Twigs, so I believe that's formerly known as. That's how I have normally seen that. If it's meant to be pronounced, I'm just not going to attempt that, because I don't need this. We don't need that here. But she gets video clip and a message from one of her friends who's like, "Oh no, one of my friends shot this video and look at this." And she's like, "Yeah, I don't really want to. This is not great." And like, "Well, no, I can show this to people, can't I? And we can get this powerful person taken down." Like, "Well, he's not some immortal, indestructible being." And yeah, he kind of is. And then, yeah, it turns out he really sort of, but I'll yell about that in a minute or two.
Kinda.
And she gets drugged and brought to him, to our villain, played by the great Danny Huston, and bless him for trying in this. He really does.
He is doing God's
He-
work
he-
in this movie.
Yeah, he never pulls away, does he?
Nope. And he reveals, when, like all good villains doing a monologue for the sake of the audience, tells this poor woman that he's about to kill that, yeah, I made a deal with the devil some time back, and I'm very old, and I send innocent souls to hell in exchange for getting to keep mine and stay above ground. So he talks her, literally uses the magic power of like the devil's voice to get her to commit suicide. So she stabbed herself in the neck a few times, like you do. And then he's like, "Okay, if this video got out, it could be somewhat troublesome for me. So go track it down and, eradicate things and do my evil minions. Go do my work." So the minions start looking around and somebody starts following Shelley, and Shelley then decides, okay, instead of being dead, let me bump into these cops, and instead of asking for help, I'll let them see that I'm carrying drugs. Like you do.
Instant bodyguards.
So she gets arrested, and instead of being sent to prison, she's sent to a isolated rehabilitation facility deep in the woods somewhere, where
Yeah,
everyone wears pink.
It's the same one the kids were at in the movie Wolf, where they all think they're animals. Same place.
I'm sure.
You didn't see Wolf?
No.
Oh, okay.
Not a thing I've subjected myself to. No.
What about Lamb?
I think I did see Lamb, because I know you kind of raved about it.
What about Pig?
Yeah, of course I've seen Pig.
Well, then you've seen 2 out of 3 Hoofcore movies. Thank you, Whitney Seibold.
He works so hard, doesn't he?
He does. So at this facility, we meet Bill Skarsgård's take on Eric Draven, who is covered in bad tattoos and quiet and mopey. And then he sees Shelley as she's brought into the facility, and suddenly light comes into his life for the first time. I don't know. And they start forming a bond, and then our villainous people find him, because it turns out that Shelley's mother is like sort of in cahoots with our villain, whose name is Rogue, because subtlety is a lost art. So they show up looking for her, and then conveniently Eric knows how to break out of this facility, just hasn't yet for some reason. Like the Joker in Arkham. I guess I'll just hang out here for a little bit. So they escape, including climbing over Constantino wire with just a sweatshirt as cover. And boy, let me tell you, that does not work.
Yeah, I winced when I saw that. I said, "You're going to come down bloody and dead."
If you've
In that order.
for those of you who have never actually seen what legitimate razor wire does, it is messed up.
Yeah, if you want to create a horror movie, just show that. We'll just start there.
If you want your search history to be forever tainted, look up like razor wire fails online. You'll find a bunch of them, and they're
Thank you.
horrific.
That
You don't want to
wince.
see that.
That makes me
So
wince
they-
thinking about it.
So they escape and hitchhike away back to the city, which is never specified and apparently sucks, but for some reason they're always there. So they go back to the city and they start falling in love and share Tumblr posts with each other, which is what passes for dialogue between these two. And if you're wondering it through all of this, wait, when does The Crow start?
Oh, yeah.
Another 30 minutes. Hang on. We'll get there. Eventually, they are, in fact, found, because, of course, they are. Then they're both murdered pretty violently, because they have to be. But Eric, after being killed, wakes up in, like, the worst train yard you've ever seen. Finds
Hang on, I referred that to. I was elbowing Jonas. I'm like, that's his respawn point.
It kind of
Yeah,
is.
sure.
It kind of is, yeah.
So there he meets a character that does not go named in the script on screen, but is apparently Kronos. So we've met one of Neil Gaiman's Eternals, I suppose. Couldn't get cast in the Sandman on Netflix, but here he is in The Crow. And he's like, "Hey, you want to go back and avenge some things?" And Eric's like, "Well, maybe this is just a dream, right?" And then he shoves him through a puddle of water. He wakes up in a river, pulls himself onto. He wakes up back where he had died, and a dirty cop comes in, and there's a fight. And at this point, Eric realizes, "Oh, my body can heal, but I still feel pain. Maybe we'll do something with that later on in the course of the movie." No, we won't. He's still, again, trying to figure some things out. He winds up dying again and going back to the train yard where he talked with Kronos, and Kronos explains a few more things like a good exposition dump. Then he's basically told, if you can go back and put right what was made wrong, maybe the next leap will be the leap home. Sorry, I mean,
Oh, that's fantastic. For you children, that was a quantum leap joke.
But I can bring both of you can come back and you can try living again, and it'll be great. So he starts going around trying to investigate poorly, but he's warned. Your love for her and your motivation must remain pure, unlike the motivation and direction you're given by the person directing this. And he starts bumbling around, investigating, because he doesn't know what he's doing, because investigate is a bad verb. Don't tell people to investigate. This goes for all you D&D players out there, too. If your directive to the party is investigate, they're not going to know what to do. Nobody knows what they're doing with that. So he lucks around into a few kills and a few bits of evidence.
It's as if you need training to be an investigator.
Who'd have thought?
God forbid.
I mean, I watched 5 seasons of The Wire. I'm now basically as good as a homicide detective, right? Right.
And you're here with us.
And I watched the aliens fly those spaceships, so I'm just as good as a pilot. Movie logic.
And I can totally convert binary into whatever digital language the aliens are using, right?
but hey, enough about Independence Day. Keep going.
In fairness to that bit, like Will Smith knowing how to pilot them, no, but they actually make a bigger point about how he connects to the alien stuff in the extended cut of the movie. But you can also see why they cut it. It's unnecessary, like a lot of this movie. Ultimately, Eric is killed again, and this time because he saw what was on the video, Mark, the horrible video that shows Danny Huston whispering into Twiggy's ear, and then she stabs some girl to death. And he's like, "Oh no, she wasn't this paragon of all things slightly underground, but still pure that I thought I was in love with." And now when he dies, his love is not pure. He doesn't heal. He goes back to the spawn point. And the guy goes, "Nope, you screwed up. You're a giant waste of everyone's time, including my own, and I'm the god of time. So you go to hell, and you can meet up with her there, and that'll be great." And he goes, "No, take my soul in exchange for hers, for star-crossed lovers is how we must be forevermore." And he looks at him and goes, "Why did you try to quote Shakespeare?" Because I don't know. I don't read poetry. She read poetry to me. It was badly translated from the original French, and even the original French was from the Middle Ages. And I only know that because I know.
This is a much better movie you're telling than it actually is.
And anyway, then he goes, "Okay, but there's no coming back from this one if you choose to go down this path." And he goes, "Yes, anything for Wanda. Sorry, I mean, Shelley." And then one of the crows flies into his back and delivers to this man the world's, God's own steroids. Because when he wakes up back in the real world, he's gained 15 pounds of muscle.
Yeah.
Yeah. That crow is made of all human growth hormone.
Oh yeah.
So he wakes up. He goes on a bit of a rampage, and now finally, Mark, after an hour and a half, it's time it is crowing time instead of Morbin time. He applies the face paint or some very loose iteration thereof. He takes the time to finish doing a tattoo on his hand, sadly.
Look, if Batman can do an art project that also doubles as arson and the Dark Knight Rises, we can take time to do a self tattoo. It's fine. There's never a wrong time for arts and crafts, even when vengeance is about.
You know that's what was said, and when somebody brought that up, that was the actual defense of this.
I am waiting for the pitch meeting on it.
It's going to be so great.
We'll see it. It'll be there.
So he begins his tour of revenge now. He goes to an opera and starts massacring guards because we need to have one big fight scene in this.
I elbowed my son and went, I'll show you Kill Bill when we get home.
Fair enough. So he kills a bunch of people, including Danny Huston's right-hand goon, and she tells him where Danny... And by the way, Danny Huston by this point has gone, so this guy has the power to avoid death, which is really what I'm after. Bring him to me, and we will have a climactic battle. So Eric goes to find him, and their climactic battle is basically Eric. He whispers something in Eric's ear, tries to suck out the black blood that is empowering him somehow, and then Eric pushes him through a window, and we fall into the respawn point, and then Danny Huston's soul gets dragged down to hell. And Eric then gets to see Shelley one more time, and he says, you go back and be happy, and I will stay here and be sad and listen to The Cure and Nirvana forever, and it'll just be a grand old time. And she wakes up back when she was originally dead, like a few days ago, screwing up the entirety of how this may or may not have played out. Because if that never actually happened, then the guy that, was killing people and had her killed is still there, and nothing was actually changed, and this is really, really dumb.
If she wakes up, none of that had happened, and 5 minutes later is killed by the bad guy again. Like, what the fuck?
And he goes off to wander alone and be sad throughout the respawn point doing something or other, and she gets to live the life of an underground alternative music creator. And yes, I phrased that deliberately to annoy you, Mark.
All right. Well, doing things to annoy me is the phrase that pays here in the Radulich Broadcasting Network. So, Shay, what did you think of this masterpiece? I just saw your soul die a little. Ooh, that makes me sad.
Was more than a little.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say it was a disappointment, mostly because I had absolutely no hope for this based off of the trailers.
Good call.
How much
from the
alcohol
get-go.
How much alcohol did you drink before you went?
How many what?
Actually,
How
much alcohol?
How much alcohol did you drink before you went to the movies?
Tell the
We
truth.
only had one, and it was not enough.
Yeah, but it was whiskey. I saw her drink it.
I had one drink. It was this big.
Oh yeah, a 42-ounce full of straight whiskey.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was from the get-go. It looked like nobody was willing to commit to anything.
Yeah.
And that's really how it ended up. Again, I am a costumer, and just from the promotional photos alone, you can tell that nobody really had a solid vision on this. The Crow character's entire visage was this really weird mixture of like trying to be goth and trying to be urban gangster rap with some of whatever the hip new thing is mixed in, and it just, none of the aesthetic really hit properly, and
No.
it was all over the damn place, and that permeated throughout the entire film. The plot lines did not really hit anywhere. It was like they were trying to make a darker movie, and someone decided to step in and be like, no, we can't do this. And like, it couldn't decide if it was a superhero movie or if it was a gothic romance or if it was trying to be some kind of like pseudo noir thing. And it just, the entire thing from the get-go has been an absolute disaster. So I can't say I was disappointed, but I also did not go in with very high expectations.
Okay, that turned out to be the exact crap you thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
All right. Mac, did you love it? Did you love it, Mac?
I did not, in fact, love it. I know. You thought maybe I'd be the holdout, but not this time. It's exactly
honestly,
what Shay
I
said.
wanted you to be like, you people think you know film? Fuck you, the three of you. This was, are you kidding
I
me?
actually thought I got to see the film with Shay, and I actually thought, if I want to make things really bad, I'm going to somehow defend this film. But I just felt exhausted when I thought about
not
that.
since Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut.
This is genius, and none of you understand.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to do that.
In about 10 to 15 years, someone's going to make that claim. Someone's going to try the revisionism.
You know it. You absolutely know it.
Kubrick's
Now, at the same
Clockwork
time,
Orange, The Crow.
Do not
I don't
let
understand. When we left the theater, I didn't really understand all the hate. It's like, okay, this is a B-, C+ superhero movie. It's not going to be good. It's just what Shay said. A lot of the most important plot lines feel unfinished. The relationship between Eric and Shelley it comes off as a drug-fueled month of sex, and it's not. You're not really. I mean, you don't want anybody to experience what they experience, but you're not invested in them. Yeah. And then when the bad guys kill her, we don't really get a chance to make note of many of them. So when he goes on his revenge trip, we don't recognize these guys. So we're not really getting a fulfilling revenge either. They couldn't decide what they wanted. Is it a vengeance movie? Is it a superhero movie? Is it 15 other things that we want to sprinkle in because we're terrified at the R rating we're going to get? And no, they never got there. And I think I left feeling like large sections of the movie had been lifted out.
So I talked earlier about my son. So what did my son think? What did I think? And then what is my craft review? I don't let my son curse. In fact, I actively chide him if he tries. There are others in his life who curse more freely, and when he's around them, he tends to do it, and I have to say, no, we don't do that. On the occasion, though, if he's singing a song that has a curse word in it or quoting a movie, I will give him a temporary allowance of a cuss word or two. This movie was so bad, I lifted the ban entirely momentarily because I wanted his unvarnished thoughts. And this 10-year-old, this genius, this God's gift to the future of humanity, looked me dead in the eye and said, Father. He calls me Father. He said, Father. I said, Son. He said, Father, this movie can suck my dick sideways.
If there was ever a doubt as to his parentage.
Yeah, well.
We'd pick you out from that.
It's like there's no doubt who his father is. And when the movie was over, and again, I'm sitting here, my son's sitting here, my daughter's sitting next to her, and we're trying very hard because she's under the Ronnie Adams Protection Act of let her like things. Hey, Bob Robert. So I first of all couldn't help myself. As soon as the movie was over, I was like, "Oh my god, that was the worst thing I've ever seen." And he was like, "I know, right?" We both look at my daughter, one single tear. I'm like, "All right, shut up. We've offended the sensitive 13-year-old." Like, shut up. He was like, I look over at Lily, I'm like, Lily, did you love it? And she's like, I did. And then I heard what you said, and I'm like, no, it's fine.
Too late.
So I'm like, Lily, tell me everything you loved about this movie. And she's like, I liked it. I liked the way it looked. I liked the story. I liked the characters. And I said, good. God help you if you ever have a review podcast. And she scurries off to the bathroom. And there's me and my son just holding each other. Oh God, it was like wreckage in a storm. We were like, this was awful. Like I immediately flashed back to you and I talking about what are we going to talk about at the end of the year when we have to come up with top 5 worst movies. Like we have Madam Web 5 times. Nope. The Crow, the current world champion of 2024 horrible movies. The Crow 2024.
Don't forget, we've got Kraven the Hunter still to look forward to, Mark.
Oh, don't say that.
Shut your whore mouth. I can't take it. So anyway.
Oh, you're gonna take it.
Oh yeah. Right in the face. Right in the face. All over me.
Okay. It's time to go.
So, now that I've gotten that out of the way, I'm noticing a trend in a lot of movies that we struggle with. One of those things is nobody working on these movies seems to know what makes people likable. Yeah. And I don't know what happened to the film industry that the concept of likable characters became an anathema to making films, but somehow that's where we are. Because this
If you
isn't.
want,
It
I
isn't
think
just
I know who
this
to
movie.
blame.
Who would
I
you blame,
genuinely think
Robert?
I know who to blame for this.
Go ahead.
I apologize for this because this is an example of of the creative types, or not the creative types, but like the people who hire the creative types taking the wrong lessons from success. I blame Iron Man
Okay.
because
Hmm.
Tony Stark is not likable. He is charming, but he's kind of a shitty character by design. This is
He's
his
kind
intended
of like
purpose.
Hulk Hogan, where he has like a +10 charisma, but he's not actually likable.
Yeah, it's kind of that. And people kind of took the wrong lessons. They looked at Tony Stark's behavior instead of his delivery and said, more of this, apparently.
Yeah.
And nope, big mistake.
So here's the whole thing with the original Crow movie that you got to understand. And that is, you want Eric to overcome all of this. You want him to avenge Sally, I think it is.
Shelley.
Shelley.
It probably is just Shelley. They're doing the same movie.
All right, Shelley. You want him to avenge Shelley. What little you get of Shelley is she's at least likable. There's nothing unlikable about her for the little bit that she's in it. The key to the original movie was the relationship he has with the young girl who's running in the street. It's the thing that humanizes him, because he's more than just a death machine. You know, he's this person struggling between life and the afterlife, and the thing that's making him hold on to his humanity is his relationship to this girl. You know, there's a lot of subtext to the line, "It can't rain all the time."
Yes.
That is utterly absent from this movie. So you have nothing that connects Eric to his humanity in this movie. Eric himself is not likable, which brings me to another. You know, I don't want to keep quoting The Drinker and Midnight's Edge, but they're using some terms that I can't argue with. This kind of came up in The Drinker's review of The Acolyte, where we're not getting men anymore; we're getting soy boys, and it's like those are the only kinds of men we're allowed to have in broad IP allegedly crowd pleasing pictures. These effeminate, like just not masculine.
Hang on. Let me help you out here a little bit.
Yeah, thank you.
You're looking for people who are for characters that are non-confrontational.
Thank you. That's the word that was escaping me.
That do a lot of therapy talk,
and
that look. Nobody cares if you challenge like traditional masculine norms as a general rule. Like, it's okay to challenge them. That's fine.
In the right frame, it works amazingly.
Yes. The problem is when that becomes the norm, you're no longer challenging anything. Yeah. You're just expressing the norm, and that's kind of where we are.
So Eric is another one of the line of soy boy action heroes. So instantly not likable. And then you have Shelley, who is the real star of this picture. She's
allegedly.
She's really the movie wants you to cheer Shelley and want her to come back, and that ultimately is where the whole thing falls apart, because the makers of this movie want you to root for Shelley to come back, and who gives a fuck about Shelley? Shelley is unlikable. There's nothing. And then my other favorite thing about this is the bit where like he's madly in love with her for the few days that they spent together. Which I at this point they gotta get the kids to the mall, so I understand them rushing through the romance. But and then it's like, oh no, she was overcome by the devil and she stabbed somebody while being hypnotized or whatever the fuck it was. And it's like, oh well, he momentarily thinks she's a bad person. Like she either needs to be all the way 100% pure or not. You can't like muddy this up. The whole premise of the movie then becomes muddy and unclear. This thing is so poorly paced. Like I actually looked at my watch.
Yeah. Oh
we were
wow.
About 40 to 45 minutes before he becomes the Crow. I don't know what person failed movie structure class, who wrote the screenplay, but that is not how you do it. We did
Well,
not.
and
This isn't
that-
fresh. We don't need a 40-minute prologue.
Well, and then to make it worse, the first 30 minutes that he's sort of the Crow, he's not really the Crow.
Yeah. He's
figuring out how to be the Crow.
Yeah, we are way too far into this movie for that sort of thing to happen. I do love the final action sequence, because here's the thing. Also, in your revenge movies, there has to be some sort of a personal thing that kind of takes you through each kill, each moment of revenge. So you have a gang. These gang have to have some degree of personality. Here's Fun Boy, and here's Doofus, and here's, Dimwit.
Tintin.
Yeah, okay. And they each do a
Here's
thing.
Bob Sapp for some reason. Sorry, thinking about that terrible Conan remake.
But, this one held her down, and this one stabbed her in the face, and this one hit her with a pie. All right, fine. We saw all the bad guys do the bad things, right? And so our hero then corners Dimwit and says, you're the one that hit her with the pie, and here's a pie for you now. And he goes out the window. And we just work through it like that. Having the Crow spend an eternity killing an army of unnamed goons to opera music was a nice try. It was a nice swing, but you foul-balled and hit a child in the audience. Jesus Christ. There has to be a personal connection to the people he's taking revenge on, or it might as well have been George Lucas's fucking robots from The Phantom Menace.
Or the nameless stormtrooper.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And for the love of all that's holy, someone who was on the production of this did not get that man an appropriately sized katana. It looks so stupid.
What the fuck was that?
Why was he
he's
like killing people with a letter opener?
Yeah, look, there's
It's a cutlass.
It's more you're right, that's more appropriate to the length, but at that point, if you're going with that length of a weapon, just use a Bowie knife. It's got more personality.
Yeah.
He might as well just gone like full, street gangster and just gone after people with a switchblade.
I think they meant to do that, though. I think their intention was, with a sword this short, it's got to be up close and personal. There are no distance, strikes. But a real katana is pretty close anyway, so I don't get it.
Yeah, what most people think of as a real katana is actually an O-katana. That's one of the longer variations. Even this one is still too short for a katana. It's closer to a tanto, but the handle and the tsuba, the guard, are all katana length. So the whole thing looks just really, really unbearably stupid.
All right. So to close up.
My armament nerd out for the moment.
I was going to say, with that little bit of nerd
You're right,
out of the way. Him killing an army of faceless goons. It was like, again, everyone working on this movie. We've been making this joke a lot lately, and I think the best way to sum up this movie is that it feels like everybody working on it was artificial intelligence. The actors, the writers, the director, the gaffer, the best boy catering, costuming, everything. Everything was artificial. This was the first movie entirely produced and developed and performed by artificial intelligence. This was it was like they took Spawn and the original Crow and Judgment Night and Surviving the Game, and they threw it all into artificial intelligence and make me a Crow movie, and it shat this out. This has I can't. The last thing I'm going to say on this, because it reminded me, because again, all I do is think about Robert every day for 25 hours a day, 8 days a week, and that is
understandably
that's really disturbing, Mark. Please don't.
And that is this. Your line about Wednesday Addams from Addams Family Values, like when the camp counselor wants her to be in the play, and she does the whole bit about you lack Aristotelian structure.
Oh, that is one of my favorite.
You want to do it for me real quick?
I can't remember it off the top of my head, but yeah, the camp counselor tells her, like, don't you want to help me make my vision? And her response is just dead, because this is original Wednesday Addams, so Christina Ricci. Your characters are underdeveloped, your plot lacks the basics of your Aristotelian structure, and your dialogue is unbearably ham-fisted. And it's the first time you see this camp counselor get offended. He's been ridiculously chipper the whole time. When she effortlessly takes down this thing he's clearly poured a lot of energy into, he kind of goes, "What did you say?"
That was, other than my son going, this thing can suck my dick sideways. That was all I could think about, was Wednesday Addams going, just tearing this thing down. I'm like, my God, what hath God wrought on the film industry and the movie-going public at large? Robert?
I could just tear this thing down on its own merits, but I think to understand the fundamental flaw here, you have to compare this to the original. And I said already, I appreciate the original. It's not a sacred cow for me, so I don't mind kind of pointing out where it struggles. But there's an underlying premise to the original Crow that this movie completely avoids for reasons that are beyond me. The original Crow is about processing and moving forward after trauma. It kind of what exists at the core there.
The book is about.
Yeah, well, even the movie, like, same thing. Bad thing happened. I'm still here, or I find myself back here. How do I deal with this? And part of what makes the original work is the fact that Eric Draven retains his sense of humanity throughout the course of that. There's flashes of pure animalistic brutality, because there's some gnarly kills in that one if you haven't seen it in a while.
Oh yeah.
But he's pulled and tempted by that, but he never quite fully leans into it. And that's important to keep us not only rooting for him, but so that when at the end he succeeds, finally finishes the putting right what was put wrong, and moves on, it makes sense. He's been trying to move on this whole time. This movie takes the opposite approach. Hey, let's fixate on the bad thing, and via magic, we will undo it. This is the world's worst lesson.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
it is the worst thing to try and center the core of your movie around. And it is that unbearable rot at the base root of what this thing is trying to do that stops anything from working. There's a bunch of other hurdles that this thing was never going to clear to begin with. But the fact that you fundamentally misunderstand what your movie is what the story is trying to do, trying to say, and you substitute in, oh, they were so in love, and wouldn't it just be the height of, oh, the gothic tragedy of it all, if he must sell his own soul to remain in this mist-covered train yard forever while she soldiers on in the real world and goes on to have just a perfectly fine rate. You may as well have just said there's not enough room on the door for both of us here as I'm floating in the mid-Atlantic.
That's a good one.
So that fundamental failure is what prevents anything from ever even having a chance at success. Then there's all the other hurdles y'all just put in front of yourselves while you were doing this. Casting, first of all. What a miss on almost every level. I'll give Danny Huston a little bit of a pass because, one, he always tries, and two, he does kind of look like a guy who may have made a deal with the devil. Legitimately.
If they were going to do what they did with him, stop wasting Danny Huston's talent and instead go get Lil Baby and have him produce magic through the power of mumble rap.
Sure.
If you're going to get Danny Huston to do this, you need to start the film with him. He doesn't belong in the story to begin with. But if we're going to base this all on reaction to him, we should have started with him, not Shelley.
I think we should lean into the casting of people with face tattoos. Get more rappers with face tattoos, more guys from the music industry with face tattoos, more women with face tattoos, just all face tattoos.
Got
and
it.
And mumble rapping. I need more mumble rapping in my dark emo gothic hero picture.
You're such an old white guy.
I think I get hip. Listen, I think I get hip to dropping a Little Baby reference somewhere out there. There's a girl that's just like, I told him about Little Baby.
I'm sure that person exists. I'm not sure she's listening to the show.
She's absolutely not. The show would give her anxiety.
Fair
and
enough.
I know that because she told me so. But keep going.
That's fair. But yeah, look, Bill Skarsgård is a pretty decent actor, but he was left floundering by both the script and the direction here. I don't think he was right for this role to begin with, but I do think that the possibility exists of him being able to kind of act his way through it and out of it with proper direction and a better script. Our Shelley is terrible. I don't know that anyone could have saved that character as written, but this unexperienced actress does the part no favors whatsoever. Our goons, our henchmen are utterly unmemorable. And especially when, again, because we're doing a 1-to-1, it's perfectly valid to compare this 1-to-1 with the original. Everybody in that original gang had personality. Heck, you could have. Here's the other one you maybe should have leaned into if you're going to go this route. Look at RoboCop. That's a case study in how to give different goons personality. And the original
we need
RoboCop.
to hate them.
Yeah. There has to be something about them that when they come on screen, you go, no, you should die. And that's not present here at all.
Yeah, you have to cheer your hero getting... Look, killing people is bad. I don't know why I have to say that out loud, but I do. Revenge fantasies, killing people are exactly what they are, because in reality, these are bad things and should be discouraged in society. So it takes a Herculean effort of writing and some talent to get you to cheer the guy murdering other people, which means the people he's murdering have to be really, really bad, and you have to want to see them die. There's no one who, unless there's something wrong with you, who instantly wants to see an army full of faceless, nameless goons who didn't do anything to him get killed as violently as they do in this movie.
Exactly. Yeah. Do they deserve that?
Right. They lost me entirely because I'm sitting there going, "Oh, those poor bastards! They didn't do anything to him. They didn't deserve any of this."
The way they moved and acted, it was like they were CIA or FBI. I thought, this is exactly what their worst case scenario is. Some talented killer finds them and just starts butchering them, but they didn't deserve all this. The one guy got his head cut in half through his teeth. Come on.
Yeah. It was like I said, artificial intelligence. It was like, well, what do the people like? Gory death. We'll give them that. And with no structure, with no frame, with no context.
It renders your violence impotent, even when it's as graphic as this is supposed to be.
Go ahead, Jay. I'm trying to chime in here. Go ahead.
And even the pacing of that fight felt like it was either done by committee or done by AI. Like it was a boring fight, and I love gore and weird kills, and that was a boring fight.
Again, compare it to the crazy 88s in Kill Bill. They're coming at her.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like Quentin Tarantino, say what you want about him, and some people hate him. I love him. He's on my Mount Rushmore of directors. That fight is all style. It is fantastic. The kills in it, it's just fountains of blood. The way that it's everything about the crazy 88 scene in Kill Bill is interesting. It is the exact opposite of the opera fight in The Crow.
Pick any major action sequence from John Wick 2, 3, or 4. Same thing. There's nothing here.
My God, look at Neo versus the Smiths in The Matrix Reloaded.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's all a big problem. I'm going to fundamentally disagree with the decision that was made in the creative process again. Switching your villain from a drug-addled crime boss with delusions of grandeur and a slightly mystic sidekick whose mysticism is slightly wonky to someone who's been around forever, sold his soul to the devil. No, again, you misunderstand why this was working in the first place. Part of what makes the first one so freaking tragic is that it's a random act of violence. Could have been anybody. Those guys were out causing mayhem and they happened to stumble across Eric and Shelley. None of that was deserved. Here, I'm not saying anyone deserves to be suffocated to death with a plastic bag, because I don't want to get on any watch lists.
And that's the only reason.
So, not saying anyone deserves that, but there's a degree to which, you lay down with dogs, you're going to wake up with fleas.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of that going on here where you don't feel as bad for these people as you should, considering how horrible their deaths are. And again, it's a structural problem that just sort of rejects the notion of how the randomness of the universe can strike at you in favor of there's a rich white guy who's a quasi-vampire who's been around forever and he's responsible for all of this.
I'm going to break in here. two things. One, the thing about the original Crow was their deaths were so violent to such innocent people who didn't deserve it. That's what unearthed the Crow and caused magic to happen. And if you would like a less magical version of the same story, season 1 of The Wire, where you have the Barksdale gang taking revenge on Omar by torturing and burning with cigarettes and killing Brandon, to the point where Omar goes, look, there's killing, which I accept because that's a part of the drug game. Then there's what you did to Brandon, which was so bad, I'm going to now go against my own creed and work with the cops. That's what we're going for here in those two instances. And this one doesn't hit the bar. It doesn't get over the bar at all. In fact, barely reaches it.
Nope.
Yeah, and it very much, the fact that the villain was supernatural very much took a lot of the fairy tale aspect out of it.
Yeah.
Because the original Crow, having the Crow be this like force of nature that is sent in to balance the wrongs of the world,
right,
and kind of protect humanity from itself, that was a lot more impactful than this weird like pseudo chess game with multiple supernatural entities that are just kind of fighting each other and humans are in the crossfire.
Right.
Yeah.
This is not a good movie, no matter how many ways you slice it, but it would have been slightly better if they hadn't called it The Crow. Had it just been a guy getting revenge on the devil, all right, that's actually an interesting premise. It's poorly done, but we're better off that way.
What this really is like the worst iteration of Spawn more than a Crow movie.
You know, they could have gotten away with a lot more if they had called this The Next Crow, or The Crow of Denver Falls, or some. Take the premise, shift it left. Now we don't have to honor the movie we've all seen. We've got this playground that we can do anything in. I think it would have been a perfectly acceptable, if not never good, but it would not have incurred the hate that it's incurred from claiming The Crow.
Call it The Sparrow and make it a mockbuster. You're
covered.
Yeah.
It's just call it something else. It'll still be bad, but it won't be unforgivable like this one is.
All right, wrap it up, Robert.
Okay, last thing, and this has to do with pacing again, because the fact that this movie takes 90 minutes of its 2-hour runtime to get to anything of note happening is a crime. So I'm gonna liken this to a trend in modern television, especially streaming television. I saw this on Twitter/X a while back, and it's stuck with me because it's become more true the more you pay attention. In the halcyon days of television, Mark, if we're talking like 80s, 90s, you know, when TV's the only thing people do in the evenings and there's like 5 channels.
Sure.
Back in those days, if you had a television show called Surf Dracula, every week Dracula would be surfing.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say Surf Dracula has a good run. It's got, 5 seasons, goes into syndication, is a slightly fondly remembered bit of television history as we approach the year 2024. Someone at Netflix or Amazon or Apple TV, they're scaling back, but some streaming service decides, hey, let's capitalize on this. Points to a random goon in their office and goes, we're going to reboot Surf Dracula. Go, do. And the guy goes, sure, we'll reboot that. The modern version of Surf Dracula is an opening episode where Dracula waxes poetic about how he can no longer surf while staring at a surfboard. The following 8 episodes are the backstory of how he acquired it, and it's only the last frame of the last episode of season 1 where Dracula actually surfs.
Here's a bit of Radulich and Broadcasting Network TV history. The first season of The Runaways took the entire season for them to run away. They run away. The Runaways ran away in the last moment of the last episode of season 1. I remember telling Jesse, I really like the show, but that choice made me want to throw a shoe at the television.
So, to that point, the original Crow, we open on the crime scene of Eric and Shelley, and they're dead. They're very dead. And Ernie Hudson's there, and he's, a slightly haggard beat cop. And we got the little girl who's like, no, my surrogate parents, because my mom's a junkie. Is a study in efficiency. This movie spends 45 minutes with the backstory of how these two met and fell in love. And boy, I hope you can write romance if this is the direction you're going to take. And newsflash, they can't.
Again, you can only
Yeah, they
pull
never
that
did
off
it.
if you're as good as the movie Fresh, which has such a twist. What a twist! That you can get away with 45 minutes of a romance that turns into what it turns into. That is a deft performance in writing at best, and not something easily replicated.
And for the record, the twist in Fresh is cannibalism, just so everyone understands.
Oh, for fuck's sake!
Hey, spoilers!
I was trying so hard.
Mark, that movie is how old now?
100 years old, and it does not matter.
Ah, well.
It's not 100 years old, but it's more than 5, so I don't care. And this movie, again, like, hey, I think Mac hit a nail on the head earlier when he said he feels like there's big chunks of this movie that were lifted. When Eric has his big flashback at the end after he's like, no, my worst impulses are being whispered to by the literal spawn of Satan. We see bits of him like burning the trailer that he grew up in, presumably with his mother inside. And like, that's kind of a big thing. You might have wanted to address that.
I was going to say,
We might not worry about Shelley being a murderer if we'd seen that.
the barbed wire hands has no payoff.
None
Yeah,
whatsoever.
there's nothing there. It's tragic, but it doesn't belong.
There's just so much that is a lot of setup, bad payoff, and wasting so much time on stuff that is better. You have to know what's better left to the audience's imagination. Brandon Lee coming back and going, she was, my wife. She was violently murdered, and this is bothering me. I don't need the nuance of their relationship. A few flashbacks and let the audience fill in the gaps. It's better that way with some of this stuff, especially if you can't write romance. And when your idea of romance is, what was the first thing you found interesting and good about me, which is a weird way to start a conversation, but okay, I'll allow it. And his response is, you had a powerful aura. I'm sorry. And when the same question is re-asked and her response is, I thought you were brilliantly broken. You are quoting Tumblr posts at each other, not exchanging dialogue. This is bad. All of this is bad. And you should feel bad.
All right.
So you're saying it was bad. Is that what you mean, Robert?
This director should be pilloried.
I think he thinks
Ooh.
it's bad. Pilloried. All right. Anything else, Robert? And I mean by that I mean stop.
Last thing, music was a giant miss.
Yeah. So just by the way, Robert, you know what else this person did? The director.
I hesitate because you've got that look in your eye like I'm going to feel bad when you say it. All right, hit me with it.
All righty. His filmography is as follows: Snow White and the Huntsman in the year of our Lord 2012.
Keep going.
2017's Crime Against Cinema, Ghost in the Shell.
It's been nice knowing you, Robert.
Keep going.
And now The Crow. He also did an episode of Foundation, which David Wright and I reviewed, and did not go back for a second season. That did not
Stop
survive the
hiring this person.
All right.
Yeah, he keeps convincing someone to give him another chance. He shouldn't have any more.
3 strikes and you're out. It works in baseball. It should work in Hollywood. All right. If nobody has anything else,
Snow White and the Huntsman should have counted for 2. We reviewed that.
No, we did the second one.
Oh, I know we did Winter's War. I thought we had done Snow White and the Huntsman, but
We
no.
weren't
Okay.
doing this back when Snow White and the Huntsman came out.
Okay. For the record, I have in fact seen Snow White and the Huntsman. It's awful.
All right. I think Shay's having issues with her camera, but that being said,
She'll
all
be
right,
back in a
ladies and
minute.
gentlemen, and for those of you that have been with us, you know what's next. For those of you that are new, here's where we talk finances. It's my favorite part of the show and the part where I lose everybody, but okay, that's fine. This is this is the part where Robert and I have fun together, and everybody else can just watch. Ladies and gentlemen, the all-important money.
We're in the money. We're in the money.
Yes, now. On a budget of $50 million, this thing made a paltry $4.6 million in its opening weekend. It is amazing that last week or so, 2 weeks ago, we talked about how Borderlands might be the new winner of the worst financial bomb in cinema history, and the people at the Crow went, "Hold my beer."
Well, hang on. Here's why that's a slightly unfair comparison. The Crow only cost $50 million, which, don't get me wrong, is more money than I will probably ever see in my lifetime. But if we're talking movie budgets, that's not outside. That's what passes for a mid-budget these days.
I was going to say, usually you and I are screaming more $50 million movies. However, $50 million is still $50 million, and when you barely made $5 million, that's still bad.
Oh yeah, no, the point there is like Borderlands isn't just going to lose money. Borderlands cost like $120 million to make.
Right. Yeah. Borderlands lost the gross national product of Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
This one just, it was the gross national product of, a small tiny island, maybe the Virgin Islands. Who knows?
Look, this could have maybe bought one of the one of the Canary Islands. You could have rented it for an hour or two. Like that's about all you got.
All right. So dealing with the box office here in the United States and Canada, The Crow was released alongside Blink Twice and The Forge. It was initially projected to gross $6 to $9 million from just under 3,000 theaters in its opening weekend.
Oh, that's pathetic.
After making $2 million on its first day, everyone in charge of Lionsgate jumped out a fucking window, including
jumped. Some of them were pushed,
and as they all cowardly lioned out the window, including an estimated 650,000 from Thursday night previews, projections were lowered to insane. 4.5 to 5 million. The film went on the debut 4.6 million, finishing 8th at the box office. Jesus Christ, they execute people for less in Asian countries. My God. All right. So reclaiming its spot at the number one for the weekend was Deadpool and Wolverine. It was knocked at 2 by Alien Romulus. They switched places again. Romulus, which came out last weekend, which you can check out our review right here on Damn You Hollywood, had a 61% drop. Want to give me 50 words on this, Robert?
Alien Romulus is going to be fine again, made on a reasonable budget. It's doing well enough internationally. It's at like 200-something million worldwide. I'm sure we'll get to it in a minute or two. It's doing fine. It's not going to be a smash because a 61% drop, like more or less the industry standard is 55, 58, give or take? It's kind of the average.
55 about
is what you want. You really that's kind of like that's a decent hold. 61 is a non-trivial drop. Again, ultimately it's going to be fine. Well, good budget, good enough opening week that even a 61% drop is not really going to hurt it, and it's doing well enough internationally that it's not going to be too. They're not going to lose money on that, but 61 is a bit steeper than you would like to see.
All right, it ends with us in its third week, maintained its spot at number 3. Blink Twice debuted at number 4, which would be bad, except for that it's going to be outdone by The Crow. The Forge debuted at number 5. Twisters, somebody commented, like, why do you keep doing that? Because it's funny. Dropped from 4 to 6 in its 6th week. The 15th anniversary of a movie that used to scare the shit out of my son when he was a toddler, Coraline.
You should take your daughter to see Coraline. She'll love it now.
Oh, yeah. Dropped from 5 to 7. The Crow debuted at number 8. I've already played the bombing noise. Despicable Me 4 in its 8th week. Dropped from 6 to 9. Inside Out 8 to 10. I think it broke another record. Trap fell from 7 to 11 in its 4th week. Between the Temples debuted at number 12.
Borderlands, all the way behind Between the Temples now.
Nice.
Right where they're going to shoot it.
Close Your Eyes debuted at number 12, and that was the weekend that was. All right, worldwide. I can't imagine there was a lot of movement here, but let's do this anyway. At 1.6, we have Inside Out 2, Deadpool and Wolverine at 1.2. We have officially 2 movies.
Seems like Deadpool and Wolverine not going to catch Inside Out 2.
Yep. Despicable Me 4 stalling out in the 800s. That maybe crosses into 9, but not much further.
I doubt it's going to hit 9 at this point.
Yeah.
Which is, bear in mind, it's still over 100 million above number 4. The gulf between like 2 and 3 is big.
Mhm.
It's almost as big as the gulf between 3 and 4. Like, there's some giant gaps here if you graph this out.
Despicable Me 4 is at 886. Dune Part 2 is at 711. Getting a Slurpee. Godzilla multiplied by Kong, The New Empire, is at 567. And there's the big gulf. 4 and 5. That's the yikes right there.
That's another enormous one. That's 100 and what?
Yeah, that's
70?
that's the demilitarized zone right there.
Yeah, $150 million.
Yeah. Kung Fu Panda 4 from fucking April is at 548. Bad Boys Ride or Die is at 401. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes at 397. Twisters at 347. A Quiet Place Day 1 taking the number 10 spot. It Ends With Us is at number 11 with 242. Garfield, for God's sakes. Here are the movies doing worse than Garfield currently. Giving Alien Romulus a pass here, but Ghostbusters Frozen Empire.
We need to talk. Our year-end thing is going to talk about how much of a bomb that was.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Bob Marley One Love is fine. It made 180 million on like a budget of 350.
Yeah.
The Fall Guy, what a disappointment that was. 180. But it still beat Mad Max Furiosa Mad Max Saga. A lesson in stop doing this. The Beekeeper.
That's a win.
That's a win. Civil War, giant win because it was made for $1.50.
Yeah.
And then we got The Mean Girls, Long Legs, Madam Web.
Hang on, for the record, also Long Legs is PVOD now.
Mm-hmm.
Big win for that thing to make $101 million, considering again its budget was very, very small.
And coming in at at 60 is Borderlands at 24 million.
Borderlands is going to make less than the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare on a budget that was about twice what that movie's was. Oh man,
what's
hurts.
great about that is Borderlands is already. It was like we joke about like the old Mel Brooks joke about like instant cassettes that are out in stores before the movie's out of the theaters. Like we kind of retold that joke for instant PVOD. It's out in PVOD before the movie's out of theaters. That actually happened with Borderlands. It took a week and they threw it on PVOD.
Lionsgate desperately trying to get more people to pay something for it.
Lionsgate currently using candles to light their offices because they can't afford their electric bill. They have currently people working with inkwells and feather pens because they can't afford electricity in computers. Lionsgate, everybody, formerly a studio. All right. With that said,
so bad even Amazon won't try to buy them out.
We have standards at Amazon.
Yeah, sure. Tell that to Rings of Power.
Ugh, don't mind me. All right. Nothing worthwhile this Friday that we're talking about. However, so we're taking a break from movies, but September kicks off in earnest with Beetlejuice.
Emphasis on the kick.
It makes me sad. I know 107 people want to talk about this between that and the original. And some of those people are on this podcast. Ain't that right, Shay?
Yes, I believe I am on that one. You're
on one of them at least. But yeah, so we have Beetlejuice on the 6th. That'll win its weekend, and it'll probably make a halfway decent amount of money. And we're going to skip the 13th. And then the weekend of the 20th, we've got 2 movies, I think, because they're counter-programming with each other in 2 wildly different genres. I think we'll do fairly well. You have Wolves with George Clooney and Brad Pitt, and they always do pretty well together. And then you have Transformers 1, which, it's a good animated feature for kids, families, etc. Followed up by another animated feature, The Wild Robot. All of that to say, this is the last we're going to hear of The Crow. This was it.
Until the year end, when you and I will tear it apart again.
Yeah.
It'll get mentioned there. Other than that, no.
Yeah, it's done. Then the next big feature, like I said, is Beetlejuice, and that'll probably own the month of September for the most part. All right, with that said, I think that's all for the money for tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, our final segment of the evening, the Critical Review.
Are you ready? No! I said, are you ready?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Well, boy, let's begin. All critics gave this flat at 20%. When we go to top critics, it drops to 13.
I don't know how this has a better score than this has a better score than Borderlands.
All audiences, it's rotten with 56%. Verified audience, however, bumped it up to 64. I don't know why. I don't know how this happened.
Because I assume there's a lot of, I don't mean this unkindly. I assume that the people who go through the effort to make accounts on Rotten Tomatoes are more like your daughter.
It's fair.
And consequently, they get their stuff verified. So it's weighted more heavily, right? That means they're not bots, right?
I can tell you what that's from. That's from people who saw neither of, haven't seen any of The Crow before and did not read the comic book. That's them.
Yeah.
All right. The AI writes, dreary and poorly paced, this reimagining of The Crow doesn't have enough personality or pulse to merit the resurrection. And
good AI.
Now, yeah, give the AI a cookie.
I was going to say, we've got to stop insulting the AI now.
For tonight, at least.
When it does a good job, we have to give it credit.
We should.
All right, Ollie. Ollie Richards of Empire Magazine, top critic. A turkey in crow's clothing.
Oh, you think you're clever.
That doesn't touch anything.
Hey, it's our friend Kevin Carr, a fat guy at the movies. Were this a brisk 90 minutes, it might have been fine, but between the convoluted character backstories and the meandering plot, it was just boring. You're not wrong, Kevin.
When you've lost Kevin Carr, a fat guy at the movies, you've lost everyone.
I was like, when you've lost Kevin Carr and 10-year-old boys, you've got nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Speaking of losing 10-year-old boys, Jeffrey Harris of 401mania.com. Go on, say your line.
I got nothing to say.
Normally you tell me to be nice to Jeff. That's what I was waiting for.
That's a weird transition, but you've been much meaner in the past. I'll let that slide.
Fair enough. The Crow reboot fails to justify its existence and instead churns out a feckless, goopy, sloppy imitation of the 1990s classic. A weak and nondescript supporting cast, banal dialogue, and a dull romance, an awful direction fail to uplift the experience. Jeff, you may remain our friend. That was entirely correct.
My only gripe with this review, because I on the blurb that you get if you just mouse over the review, it is the unfortunately obvious pun of Crow reboot fails to take flight.
Boo.
Oh.
Speaking of
so
boo,
that deserves a boo. The actual review is
at all.
The actual review is fine.
Hope Madden of Fox 28 Columbus. Visually, it can't match the original, but the opera house sequence is so well staged and perfectly flanked by the performance on stage, benefits from impressive choreography and effects work, giving the film its only truly memorable moments.
How in the world can you claim that a single 5-minute sequence justifies a 2-hour runtime for this movie and pushes it into the positive?
Because she likes opera. She's the only one that noticed that those two things were happening together.
All right.
I look, that opera deserved better than to be associated with this. That's a very good opera.
It did, yes.
James Preston Poole of But Why, Shay? A Geek Community. So I wanted to feel included. Sexy, tortured, and very gothic. The Crow absolutely lives up to its namesake in its own way. Get
this
him,
is a
Shay.
person who
get him, Shay.
Karen, we got a new one, Shay. Go ahead.
What in the fuck? I don't think that guy had his glasses on.
Perfect.
This is a man not familiar with anything actually sexy, anything tortured, or the Gothic architecture and aesthetic.
Somebody paid him to say that.
Yeah. That's borderline PR stuff that he's just...
It really is. It's too patsy.
Rafer Guzman, Newsday, top critic, Newsday, formerly a newspaper.
An improved...
I can't believe what I'm about to read. This hurts me. This might be bringing back my cancer. An improved redo of the 1994 cult favorite. Fire this man and close the paper. That is a sin against journalism.
He's full of beans too. He's not saying much. Just one sentence. He doesn't justify any of it.
I expect there to be a retraction printed tomorrow on Newsday for this review.
For its entire tenure. We're just retracting.
Yes. Just how can you be that bad at your job?
God.
All right. The future ex-Mrs. Ronnie Adams, Emma Wolf of Spooky Astronauts. It's mid.
I mean, that's a very glib review and poll, but it's actually insulting to middle-of-the-road movies to compare it with this.
That was also...
I forget which... was it the Good Place? You basic? That's it.
That was also the most inside jokes, by the way. All I needed to do was make Robert smile. All right, moving on.
A lot of sane people here, it seems.
Richard Krause of Richard Krause of the James Krause. Wait, that's an MMA fighter.
No, Mark, no, you can't reference him.
Okay.
Oh, did you not know Did you not know the scandal with him?
Okay, never mind. Moving on.
He's been ostracized from the sport for fixing fights, for sending out people for fixed gambling. He would send out injured fighters and then bet against them. It's kind of the way.
Got it. The Richard Krause of the Richard Krause. The Crow
also
is
was
back.
Spelled differently.
But unfortunately never really takes flight. For a movie about soulmates and with a villain who dooms souls to hell, the new film feels soulless. Dick.
That's a bit of a tortured wordplay you decided to throw out there.
Travis Humpson of Punch Drunk Critics, who's always, makes us feel better about our own IQ. The film exceeds expectations, but this goth angel of death never quite soars. If anyone asks me why I make fun of Travis Hobson, that's why.
Fair enough.
Why. Yeah.
I can't wait for it. Look, you're going to find Armand White having given it a good review because he just likes to be a contrarian, I'm pretty sure.
Just going to turn the podcast off. We're done here. Friend of the show, best friend of the show, also, co-podcaster with other best friend of the show, Whitney Seibold. William
does not know you exist.
Best friend of Mark Radulich, William Bibiani, otherwise known as Bibbs. That's what I call him. Of the rap, top critic.
Okay, you now have to harass him on Twitter and call him that every time you do.
That's his own bit. He's just like, everyone calls me Bibbs. And then Whitney Seibold goes, I have no nickname. And that's all. Then 20 minutes on this. When you stifle the emotional simplicity of a story like The Crow to emphasize the plot had better make sense. And it doesn't. It's got perplexing rules and a vague chronology, and nothing seems like it matters anymore. You ain't just
correct. All
right, we'll do
you
one more.
You can remain best friend of the show. Hey, look, there's Whitney Seibold, the other one. Scroll back up.
I'm going. Oh, my God. Best friend of Mark Radulich and spiritual host of Damn You Hollywood, Whitney Seibold of Slash Film. What? Thanks to sloppy editing and a general lack of basic storytelling, acumen, event speed pass without much explanation, emotional resonance, or in some scenes, basic communication. Oh, Whitney,
accurate.
Guard. Whitney Seibold, he's fantastic. Alrighty. Let's see if I can find any of Shay's husbands.
I was gonna say you got to marry off Shay here in a bit.
Gosh, like what? All right. The future ex-Mr. Shay Tate, Pablo O. Schultz of Clarin. It is quite weak.
Da-da-da-da-da.
Alrighty.
I'll give that one a pass because it's actually in Spanish, so that might be a slightly different translation for that sentiment.
Right,
yeah, but Shay should still divorce that guy.
True.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure that's a real person.
And back over him with your truck. All right. Back over him with
oddly
your truck.
Specific.
It's the phrase that pays here at the Radulich Broadcasting Network. So that is the end of our show. Shay, did you have a great time tonight? Are you glad that you got to be Dorian's understudy yet again?
Yeah, absolutely. I always love coming on the show, and understudying for Dorian is absolutely no problem for me.
I have this picture though. You say that, and I believe you. I believe you're a woman with agency who makes her
Careful
own decisions. and that you choose to be here of your own volition because you thoroughly enjoy it. There is a part of me that imagines like you're off camera and there's Dorian like shoving you in front of the camera. He's like, go. He's like, I don't wanna. I hate this podcast. I asked you for my opinion.
Now wait a minute. Look at that makeup. She was ready.
She's like holding on to chairs. No, I don't want to do it. He's like, Dorian's like, he's gonna be mad if I no show yet another podcast. Go. So I'm glad you're here. And that you had a good time. I think you will be back. When are you back again?
I think Beetlejuice is the next one I'm back for.
And that's the on trial for the original Beetlejuice. All right, so
Yeah.
she'll be back in a couple of weeks.
The original's probably guilty. Just throwing that out there.
They're gonna hang that jury, hang them high. So besides coming on my podcast with against or with your will, what else you got going on? Show us where you pissed from, Shay.
So I am a costume designer, makeup artist, and props master. I generally go by Tate FX on Facebook and Instagram. And I work a lot with Frikey Pictures, which is Dorian's film. It's Dorian's film company.
There you go.
And other than that, I've got a few things that we're doing on the W2M network, and that's about it.
All right, Matt Kettner of Matt Kettner. Show us where you pissed from.
Well, I'm going to call myself the scriptwriter because I write scripts, but it's been a while. The thing I'm most known for locally in the independent film world is repairing scripts. And what I mean by that is, oh my God, I need this one scene where all these things can happen and we can't write ourselves out of it. Quick, save me. One of them was they needed the President of the United States to make a particular speech so that everyone was okay with him dropping a gas bomb on somebody. And I had to make that inspiring. I don't think it was ever filmed, so I'm not sure I pulled it off, but that's what I do.
All right.
You know, there was a time that would have been a very difficult hurdle to clear for the audience.
Yeah.
We're not there anymore.
No, we're not. We're just not.
Well, I think the next one you're on is actually in December, so Mac's going to be taking a bit of a break from us, unless he decides to come on.
A little bit.
Between.
Well, unless I'm covering for somebody.
Yeah. He'll be back for Kraven the Hunter. I think you were going to be on the Goonie, our director focus on Richard Donner, but I kicked that into next year to make room for something else. So
It'll work.
Yeah, that's fine. So that's Mac. As for me, this week I've got this show, plus on Thursday, Dorian or his understudies will be on our triple feature along with Sean Comer, presumably. You never know who's going to show up to a Radulich and Broadcasting Network. Everyone's like Snoop Dogg. But we'll be doing a director focus on Stanley Kubrick. We will be looking at Clockwork Orange, the 1962 version of Lolita, with what's the actor's name that Dorian does the impression of all the time? That's escaping me. And Eyes Wide Shut with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman. Very shapely Nicole Kidman. Next week, first week of September, we've got myself, Alexis Haina, and allegedly Dorian will be doing a TV party for The Offer, one of the few that I'm actually hosting these days that isn't with Jesse. And then 87 people will be on this on trial for Beetlejuice. And by 87, I mean 3, because Ronnie dropped off today. But that'll be Sean Comer, Dorian Price, and Shay. We'll be talking the original Winona Ryder and Michael Keaton Beetlejuice. That's what I've got going on. Robert Winfree, show us where you pissed from.
Can I just say it's kind of a crime that whenever anyone talks about the original Beetlejuice, they do kind of fixate on Winona Ryder. It's not like Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis aren't the main characters.
Yeah, but Winona Ryder was kind of the it girl at the time.
And now apparently turned into a legend in the small town because our in-universe stuff must match the bizarreness of the real world, I guess.
You know how a few months ago you were sad because or it was either this or the Batman, or there were 2 separate instances of where you're just like, why am I always out of step with the rest of the known universe? This makes me sad. Yeah, that's how I feel about Beetlejuice. From my daughter to Shay to most of the known humanoids that populate this sphere, everyone's like, oh my God, Beetlejuice. And I'm like, oh my God, shoot me. So...
Don't worry, Mark. You won't stay in hell very long.
Yeah, I
promise, Mark. I will.
Didn't you say you were into like the goth scene? Yes, but like some stuff. Oh my God! Like It was fine when I was a child.
And the general trend of the normalization of getting older and maintaining irrational fandoms over things for children has not been a good look for society.
Hi, Chris Bailey. Where you at?
I said what I said, and I'll stand by it.
Speaking of standing by what you said, what are your plugs, sir?
All right. You can find me covering professional wrestling and mixed martial arts over at 411mania.com. This last week, I covered WWE SmackDown, UFC on ESPN 62, which was actually not a terrible card. And I covered AEW's All In. They were back in Wembley. There were a bunch of people there. It was a good time with with a couple of bad matches, because Mercedes Moné is comically overrated and Britt Baker is kind of the same. And putting them together was just a damp squib.
They trip over each other like klutzes.
That, and boy, that crowd did not care about anything that they were doing. They were.
And here we thought Mercedes Moné was a giant star.
If you listen to her,
Put that away.
Keep going.
But main event for that, genuinely great. Bryan Danielson, Swerve Strickland. Of course, those two are going to be great together. So my review of that is up in the Wrestling Zone of 411mania.com. If you want a full breakdown of the latest UFC event, you can find my report in the MMA Zone of 411mania.com, or listen to my MMA podcast, the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. This last week was just a review of that event, so fight by fight, how my predictions went, and my thoughts, technical breakdowns, all that good stuff. So if you're interested, give it a listen. Always appreciated. And yeah, so that's what we've got. Same stuff this week. WWE SmackDown. There's no UFC event on Saturday, so I will probably waste my free Saturday because that's what I do. Yeah, and then you just sent me the revised list. Next week we're off next week, right?
You and I are off next week. The week after we have Beetlejuice. The week after that, despite your protestations like a girl that we didn't have to do this, even though that's what you wanted to do, we are doing Ash vs. Evil Dead Season 1. Pain in my ass.
Okay, hang on. So you all understand this. I'll go over this again when we review that. No. Because 2024 is the year that we pay off all these stupid long-running gags. Like Channing Tatum as Gambit.
Mm-hmm.
Years ago, Mark said, hey, pick a thing, and I pick a thing for a TV. I need something for this Halloween. I need something for this October. Here's the date. Pick a thing that you think is appropriate. I said, sure, Ash vs. Evil Dead only wrapped up like 2 years ago. That'll work. Mark said, fine, here it's on the schedule. I went, okay, that's good. And then a month or so out from that podcast, he went, hey, I got to push this. I went, okay, that's fine. He said, I swear I will make it up to you. I said, whatever. I'm not emotionally invested in this. It's okay. So he pushed it to next year and he put it on the schedule, and then I forgot about it. And a few weeks later, he calls and says, hey, I got cancer, so I'm shifting a bunch of stuff that includes this, and we'll just play this by ear. And I went, buddy, focus on beating cancer. That's significantly more important than any of this stuff. And then about every 36 months, he would then say, hey, I'm putting this on the schedule, and it would just shift. And it never quite happened. And I'm fine. I don't care at this point. And now I'm just waiting for something else random to come up, because that's just kind of how this goes.
Well, no, I won't fuck you this time because Jesse's involved, and I want a podcast with him.
I'm just waiting for something to happen and this to be pushed off. Or again, we're just paying off our long-running gags that Hollywood somewhat decided was like, hey, Channing Tatum as Gambit needs to get paid off because those jackasses on that podcast were making fun of Mark for it forever.
Yes, so anyway, we've got Beetlejuice 2, Ash vs. Evil Dead Season 1 the following Monday. The Monday after that is Transformers 1, and the Monday after that is The Wild Robot. So, with that said, there was a bunch of people...
All looks pretty good.
There was a bunch of people in our comments tonight, a bunch of people that were watching live. Loving the live audience. Appreciate all of you. I hope you guys have enjoyed our podcast. If anyone was new tonight and was just kind of checking it out because you wanted to see what I do, hope you enjoyed it. We didn't bore you too much. For everyone that was, I didn't put the comments on screen, but I was interacting with people in the comment section. For all of you, especially this one particular person who was commenting all night long. Michelle Thomas, very appreciative. Like I said, I don't always put comments on the screen because they sometimes throw off the conversation, but I do like hearing
And
from you.
sometimes you've been tricked into putting some very not safe for family and friends things on screen.
Yeah, that was mostly because of Pat. In any case, my point that I was trying to get to was really appreciate the interaction, really appreciate the audience, the comments, everything. Makes the show that much better. So please come back. With that said, this has been Damn You Hollywood for the beautiful, illustrious, agency-ridden, wonderful makeup artist person. Just amazing. Tate.
Methinks the host does protest too much.
Shut the fuck up. For Matt Kettner, who will fix your scripts and your car. And for Robert...
I'm not bad with a car.
And for Robert Winfree, who does things. I'm running out of words. Be well, be
Understandable.
Be well, be safe, and behave.